Hello friends. A very good day to you. Today we will be talking about the Government of India Act 1858. Now, the institution of the 1858 Act takes place right after the revolt of 1857, and in fact it can be said that the 1858 Act is enacted in order to because of the effects of the revolt of 1857. Okay, it is one of the effects of the revolt of 1857. However, we see that there are certain long term causes also, because we see that the Charter Act of 1853 had renewed the charter of the East India Company, but it has not specified the time frame, and it had been reiterated from the Charter Act of 1833 itself that the East India Company and its possessions in India actually belong to the King of England, and that they are holding their possessions, the British King's possession, in trust in India. Okay, so the East India Company does not hold these lands exclusively by themselves, but therefore that they were holding it in trust for the King of England, and therefore it was just a matter of time that the East India Company's rule in India would come to an end, and the Queen or the King would take possession of his own territories in India. Okay, it was considered the Queen or the King's territory, and this is what happens through the Government of India Act. Through the Government of India Act, the Queen of England takes possession of her Indian domain. All right, so the Government of India Act is preceded by the Queen's Proclamation, and in fact it is the Queen's Proclamation which is the basis of the various aspects or of the various provisions of the Government of India Act. The Queen's Proclamation first of all grants amnesty to all the mutineers of the revolt of 1857. The second clause of the Queen's Proclamation is of course the Queen taking possession of territory, army and revenue, of territory, army and revenue of the British East India Company and the British East India Company's possessions or British East India Company's trust possessions in India. And thirdly, there is also a philosophic aspect. It can be already almost be called a philosophic aspect to the Queen's Proclamation, in which the Queen says that the philosophy of administration of the British government in India would be non-biased and of course the philosophy of administration will be fair. Okay, philosophy of administration will be fair, and it would reflect the values of the masters, that is the British values. Okay, these are British values. However, later through our later videos you would understand that these values being talked about, or this philosophy of rule that is being talked about in the Queen's Proclamation does not come to fruition, because the British rule in India was inherently an oppressive and also an you can almost call it an extortionist rule over India. Okay, so having looked into the Queen's Proclamation, let us proceed into the Government of India Act of 1858, which follows the Queen's Proclamation. Okay, of which amnesty, possession of the Indian revenues, Indian territories and Indian armies, and also the philosophy of rule, these are all reflected within the Government of India Act also in a very subtle manner. All right, so now let us proceed into the various provisions. Now, some of the most important provisions of the Government of India Act is the abolition of the East India Company's rule in India. Okay, East India Company's administration in India is abolished. Okay, this is the most important thing about Government of India Act of 1858, and abolition of East India Company's rule in India also means that the structure associated with the East India Company's rule in India is also necessarily abolished. Okay, the structure of administration, that is the Board of Control, which was formed in order to have some kind of parliamentary oversight over the East India Company, is abolished, and the Court of Directors, which directed the policies of the East India Company, is also abolished. Okay, through the 1858 Government of India Act. What is instituted in order to replace these very important elements which had been part of the administration of India? What replaces these elements is the third aspect of the Government of India Act of 1858, that is the Secretary of State. Okay, the Secretary of State for India, a new office that is created just so that India can have some kind of parliamentary oversight. Secretary of State, of course, is responsible to the British Parliament. Okay, so the Secretary of State and his office is instituted, and the Secretary of State in the disbursal of his duty will be assisted by a India Council. Okay, by a council which is, it is conceived of an expert council. Okay, conceived as an expert council on all matters related to India. And how do you guarantee that it is an expert council on India? By saying that its members will have served at least 15 years in India, okay, and their departure from India would not be for more than a 10 years period, should not be for more than 10 years period. So you must be residing in Britain, but you should not have left India for more than 10 years, because many things change within 10 years and their policies have to be up to date. All right. So these are some of the most important criteria for becoming a member of the India Council. There were 15 members in the Indian Council, and out of which 8 were nominated by the Queen herself. Okay, the British Queen herself will nominate 8 members within the India Council. Now, certain controversial matters also have to be dealt with about the India Council and the Secretary of State for India. The payment for their offices, okay, activities, offices, and also the payment of their salaries were made by the Indian Exchequer. Okay, and later on it becomes part of the agenda of the nationalist agitation, that why should these people who are working for Britain, who are housed in Britain, why should they be paid for the Indian Exchequer and out of the Indian revenues. Okay, so these are important elements that you have to understand about the Government of India Act of 1858. Now, apart from that, we also see, okay, the Secretary of State will be responsible to the British Parliament. Now, how will the Secretary of State be connected to India? The Secretary of State is connected to the administration of India through the office of the Viceroy and Governor General. Okay. Now, in his capacity as the administrative head of India, he is the Governor General, and the Viceroy remains the Governor General. His council remains the Governor General's council. Okay, later on becomes the Imperial Council. Okay, and however, a new addition is made within his title, that is the addition of the title Viceroy. Okay, and the Viceroy comes with a specific set of duties. It is the Viceroy element in the title of the Governor General which makes him responsible to the British royalty. Okay, he is a deputy royal. Okay, he is a deputy royal, and therefore you see that the viceroys are of course coming from those people who are peers of the realm, that is those people who have been knighted, those people who are hereditary aristocrats. Okay, so they come from this particular branch of society. They are deputy royalty. He is a deputy royal stationed in India and responsible to royalty, but in his capacity of Governor General, he is responsible to the British Parliament. How is he responsible to the British Parliament? He is responsible to the British Parliament through the office of the Secretary of State for India. Okay, so this is a very important shift which takes place in the role of the Governor General. Now, all of these changes have come about because of the fact that the British, instituted various inquiries into the revolt of 1857. Why did it occur? Of course, blame was placed on the Indians, that it was the religious proclivities of the Indians, the backwardness, essential backwardness of Indians, which led to this great revolt of 1857, when people who had been civilized, okay, when a civilizing nation came in to rule India and tried to civilize these Indians, the barbarics rose up against the British. Now, this was the common statement which was made by most of the British administrators and British parliamentarians of that period of time. Okay, however, there were certain sections within the British administration who also believed that there were long-term causes associated with the revolt of 1857, and one of these causes was the misadventures of the East India Company and their misrule in India, their obnoxious policies in India, which led to this ferment among the people of India, which led to the rebellion. And therefore, all of these changes, the abolition of the East India Company's administration through the Government of India Act of 1858, of course, takes place because of this necessity to take away power from the hands of the East India Company and bring it back to that of the British monarch, and the British Parliament's authority in India is established through the Government of India Act of 1858. Of course, it was inevitable because from 1833 itself we see the trend beginning that the monarch is trying to, or the British government is trying to assert its authority over the Indian domain. All right. Now, as far as the other changes, as far as the structural changes are concerned, now these are all organizational changes, okay, but structurally nothing much changes with the Government of India Act of 1858. All right. Centralization remains the core of the British Empire in India. However, we will see that with the later Councils Act, the period of administrative decentralization, that is a structural change from the idea of centralization which had been taking hold right from the Regulating Act. Now, after the 1858 Act, when the Indian Councils Act will begin, we will see that decentralization takes hold of the administrative mentality, and most of the acts that are promulgated after the Government of India Act of 1858 are acts which are based upon decentralization. Now, you might ask, who is the first Viceroy of India? Of course, it is our very own Lord Canning, who was also the last, you see, the last Governor General of India. Governor General, only Governor General, okay. Of course, the idea of a Governor General, it still persists, and the official title of Governor General, it still persists, okay. But the new title of Viceroy is added. So, the last person, last ruler of India or British administrator of India who was just a Governor General was Lord Canning, and he was also the first Viceroy. All right. So, I hope the Government of India Act of 1858 is quite clear to you through this video. I hope that you will be studying hard. Thank you.